Today we are going to be celebrating a special milestone on my channel as I have hit 500 subscribers. There was a point where I didn't even think 200 of you would watch my channel, and now I have 500 subscribers, and we are going to celebrate that today with a requested video. Welcome back to another video. We are celebrating 500 subscribers here on my channel. This past weekend I hit 500 subscribers. I am halfway to being a YouTube partner again, because I was a YouTube partner before and then they changed their qualifications for it and now I'm not, but we're halfway there. So this past weekend, I hit 500 subscribers. I took to Twitter and Instagram to thank all of you guys, but also if you guys had any special requests of what you guys wanted to see for a 500 subscription celebration video. I decided not to do a Q&A at this point, and I definitely cannot do a giveaway, although I would really like to do a giveaway, but we're going to leave those for further milestones once I get there. One of the special requests was to do my all-time favorite books, which is daunting, and I don't think I've talked about it. I've talked about my favorite books in general, but I haven't really just given you a list of what my all-time favorite books were. So I perused my Goodreads read books to see, you know, what I kind of think is my top favorite, and then I picked, of course, the right away first books that come to mind. Those are definitely my favorites, but it took me a moment or two to really think about what books I loved and what books I would read again and what books have just kind of stuck with me. And there's a lot I could have included, but I just stuck to the ones that have really just impacted me lately, and then just ones that have really stuck to me that I like reread every year, or just books in general that are right away like those are my favorites. So I've split them up into categories. I have recent favorites, kind of those iconic favorites that is almost a favorite for everybody, and then just longtime favorites that are always going to be a favorite for me, and then some favorite classics. In my favorite classics, I have to mention Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. I've physically read this, I've listened to the audiobook, I've watched the Masterpiece Theater edition with Felicity Jones. I remembered the actress's name this time. And I love this story. I relate so much to Catherine. She's such a spunky, imaginative, and just a very different Austen heroine that you're not really used to so far that I've read in her books. And I just like how she's so different in a way from the other Austen heroes so far. I haven't read Pride and Prejudice yet. She might be on the same line as Elizabeth, but I will have to get there first to see. But so far with all the heroines, I have yet to meet somebody like Catherine. I also really like Mr. Tilney and just his banter and wit and his way he talks to Catherine. I just really enjoyed him as a character. So this is one of my favorite classics. Another favorite classic of mine is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. I first watched the BBC miniseries with Richard Armitage and loved it. Not just because it was Richard Armitage and I liked him as an actor, but it was just a really well done story of just life and family and the changes that come into life and kind of changes in the world and how that affects the family life and everything. And I decided to pick up the book. I picked up the audiobook via Audible, and I have this beautiful Penguin Library edition, and I really enjoyed the story, just the family relationships and the changes in the culture and the world as industry and economies change and everything. So it was really interesting to read that effects on people, and I really didn't think I would be so engaged in a book like that or a classic like that, but I just felt really invested in these characters' lives. A newer favorite of mine came out this year, and it's sitting pretty high on my favorite books of 2018 right now, and that is Fox by Nadine Brandes. I really enjoyed this. I loved the engaging characters. I loved the way she wrote history and incorporated history into a magic system, but kept very accurate to the actual historical events at that time. And it just felt like the magic system fit right into that time period, but also the way she wrote that time period. She also wrote some of my favorite sword fight scenes, and usually sword fight scenes just kind of blare by you in a book. You get the before and the after, but her during the actual fight really got me engaged, and I could picture the actual fight like it was in a movie, and I just really enjoyed the way she wrote this story. It was a fantastically written book that is just still sitting with me. I can't wait to reread it already. I'm glad the audiobook is unscribed. I might actually physically reread this one to kind of both physically and listen to the book, but I definitely want to give this one a reread like ASAP. Maud by Melanie J. Fishbane is also one of my newer favorite books. This one came out last year, and this was my top book of 2017 last year, and I did not expect to adore this as much as I did. I just love the way Melanie wrote about Maud's life, and I felt so inspired and encouraged by Maud's story. I identified with so much of Maud's story, and I just loved Canada. I loved Canada and how it was brought out and represented in this book. The Métis peoples were represented in this book. I have yet to read a book that not only mentions a Métis character, but also Michif, the Métis language. They don't often mention that as well. So I really liked just feeling really at home reading this book. This book felt like home, and it still has one of my favorite quotes about one of my favorite places, which is Winnipeg, Manitoba. And I just love how it described Winnipeg as being a place where somebody threw down some houses and streets and forgot to sort them out, because that's really what it felt like when you're living and driving around in Winnipeg. And it just felt like coming home every time I read this book. For those go-to favorites that seem to be on everybody's lists, I still have to mention The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I loved the story. I was invested in Katniss and Prim's life as soon as Katniss said, "I volunteer as tribute." I was hooked all the way till the end for these characters. For me, it just kind of became that gateway into the YA world. I really enjoyed the characters and the world, and it just made me realize what kinds and types of stories could be out there for me, which is because I avoided reading after college. I wasn't into anything. Nothing appealed to me. A lot of the Christian romance, this goes back to why I don't read Christian romance. But at the time I was trying to find books and stories I liked, but everything in the Christian genre was the same. And I wasn't getting anything content-wise or story-wise that captivated me, so I gave up reading until I read The Hunger Games. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone is on everybody's favorites list. I have yet to meet somebody in the book world that has not been influenced by Harry Potter. I am a proud Hufflepuff, and I did in fact read The Philosopher's Stone and The Chamber of Secrets when they were first kind of released. Our school library did have them, but I went to a conservative Mennonite school, and a lot of people and my friends were kind of putting the books down, and so I kind of stopped reading them out of peer pressure, and I only picked up the entire series 20 years later. And I first owned my book series of the Harry Potter series 20 years later, and I currently have 3 sets of editions going for these books. This is just another world of reading that opened up possibilities of what we can create with our imaginations, but also the characters that were created in this world. There's not a side character or a character in here that I didn't love and feel for and just adored. It's one of the best written cast of side characters I have yet to find, where everybody is connected, everybody has their place in the story, and nobody really gets left behind and forgotten as the series progresses. So it's one of my best set of character-driven stories. Out of the Harry Potter series, I have to mention The Prisoner of Azkaban. This book, for some reason, and I can't really put my finger on as to why, but this book is my favorite out of the Harry Potter series. And I really think it's towards the end, and I hope I'm not spoiling anything, where Sirius offers Harry a home. And I cry every time I read that, just because of everything Harry has been through. He has somebody who cares and loves him that is his own, that he doesn't have to share with, like, you know, Ron's family loves and adores him, but that's Ron's family, and Hermione and his friends at school, but Sirius is Harry's. Sirius is Harry's family's Harry's godfather, and he is here for Harry. And I think that's why I liked this story so much, was Harry getting that taste of that. And it just made me so happy for a time. I'm trying not to spoil anything, but it just made me so happy reading that. Also, the background story of the Marauders and the friendship that James, Sirius, and Remus had. I really liked a story within a story, and that was a really good set of a story within one. And I feel like it just gave you more information and background to the rest of the series and opened all of that up for the rest of the books. No list of favorites is going to be complete without The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. This story just captivated my imagination, and I was that kid looking in every closet and wardrobe. Old buildings, as soon as I saw an old building, I just wanted to explore it, because you never know what you might find. I just wanted to explore everything and find a hidden world. It was one of my favorite concepts of an imagination, and I adored this story. For a long time, I only really had this animated movie of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and the terrible BBC editions. Those weren't good. I can't even say they were good for the time. Those weren't good. But that's all I had really growing up. I did have one teacher way back in grade 2 who decided to start reading the Chronicles of Narnia to us. So she started with The Magician's Nephew, which I really enjoyed, and then she continued on. I don't know how far we got before we moved up to grade 3, but we definitely got to at least the first 3 books. And The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, still out of the series, is my all-time favorite, and I just love the characters, the world, and just the imagination it creates in people still. The Lord of the Rings is also going to be another staple that is always going to be on my favorites list, and my favorite out of the trilogy is The Two Towers by Jrr Tolkien. I never again grew up reading these. I was enamored by the movies later, actually. I didn't fully love the movies until maybe like college years, and I think it was my relationship with my best friend Pippin, who you guys have heard about, that kind of just launched this world for me and opened up so much of the world that Tolkien created, and that's when I kind of became obsessed with the movies. I finally read the books a few years ago and just love the way Tolkien writes. His world building is A+. I cannot think of another author who has created a world better than Middle-earth for Jrr Tolkien. That is a world that I feel I could actually live in, other than Narnia, which you have to really look for. I feel like Middle-earth for me was more attainable than Narnia, believe it or not. As I said, out of the trilogy, The Two Towers is my favorite. It's also my favorite movie out of the 3, although it's kind of a really solid tie between The Return of the King and The Two Towers. The Fellowship of the Ring, it's so hard to pick, but we're going to stick with The Two Towers, I think. But it's really going to be hard for me if I keep going, because now I'm thinking about scenes from both the books and the movies, and I'm like, now I don't know which one to pick, but we're going to stick with Two Towers. Last but certainly not least is The Hobbit by Jrr Tolkien. I read this when I was in high school. My mom started reading the book to us, but our lives got really busy, so she never did finish reading The Hobbit. And then they announced the making of the movies by Peter Jackson, and I got really excited. I was watching production vlogs from day one. From the first day announcement of the filming of Unexpected Journey, I watched all of the production vlogs. I felt so invested in this movie trilogy, and I realized I never finished the book. And I watched the first Unexpected Journey, and that was up to the point of which we had read as a family, and I'm like, oh, okay, I better finish the book for the next 2 movies. At that point, I thought there was only going to be one more, and then there was a third one, and I'm like, what are we doing? So I finished the book, and I loved it. This is such a good book. I loved the characters again, the world building. This is such a great introduction to the Middle-earth. It's just absolutely just amazing. I want to go on an adventure with Bilbo so bad. As for the movies, I can only really watch Unexpected Journey. Once we get to Desolation of Smaug and the Battle of the Five Armies, I actually don't like them. I have to admit the only one I like is Unexpected Journey because it's the one that stays closest to the book. I know he supplemented with other Middle-earth lore into the movies, but I cannot watch the Tauriel love scenes. Why is she there? She was a really cool character, but I don't know why Tauriel is there. She's not even in other Tolkien work. We're not going to go into it, but The Hobbit. We're going to put this down now. So those, as it stands, are currently my all-time favorite books. Some of these I have reread 100 times. Some of these I'm already thinking of rereading again and again. I have audiobooks for all of these. Well, except for Maud. There isn't an audiobook for Maud. But I have watched as much media that is related to these books. I'm just enamored by the world these authors created. And these books are really what makes me a reader. And these kind of give me that reader personality, this reader profile. So if you want to know what I'm like as a reader, just look at this stack of books. And that is what I'm like as a reader. And I just want to say thank you again for 500 subscribers, and thank you to those of you who comment regularly on my videos. I love chatting with you guys. I know I don't get to your comments right away. I do have 2 jobs and it is kind of stressful and I fall behind, and I'm really sorry, but I do read all of them as they go up, and then I try to respond if I have a response right away. But thank you as always for supporting my videos, for liking them, for watching them, and all that you guys do. Don't forget to follow me on my other social media accounts. I don't use Twitter as often anymore, but I am still on Twitter, but I mainly use Instagram. So if you guys want to follow me on Instagram, I vlog on there. I kind of do behind the scenes, so you'll see a lot more stuff on Instagram. Well, as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!